Evening and welcome to what will be the penultimate Magpie Circle podcast of the season. Just one more to go after the final game at Forest Green Rovers, and we'll be taking a summer break. Been a bit of a long season, this one, hasn't it? Ups and downs. Now then, a few questions tonight as thoughts move towards the summer. Retained lists, defenders coming in. What will you be wanting to do? Are we going to retain the likes of Macaulay Langstaff, Dan Crowley and Jody Jones? They were all questions and thoughts and chats we had with Richard Montague and Chief Exec Joe Palmer last week. Thanks to those for giving us their time. Certainly provoked a lot of interest, a lot of views and a lot of thoughts. We'll have a bit of a debrief, myself and Stell, from tonight. Your thoughts and views on the message boards on that and what you made of it will be most welcome. I guess, as we all know, stats is an important part and data of Notts County Football Club under the Reach Brothers ownership. I guess two stats in relation to Stuart Maynard and results. Are you in the camp that says 3 wins in 4 games, or are you in the camp that kind of looks at 5 wins in 18 games in Stuart Maynard's overall charge since he took over from Luke Williams? Your thoughts on that? Always about results. Good win on Saturday. 3 in 4. Hopefully we can make it 4 in 5 at Forest Green on Saturday. All your thoughts and more tonight. Stell, welcome aboard. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again. Only one more to go. Takeaways from Saturday?
I don't think we can't overhype it, can we? It was a second to last game of the season where, Colchester had a bit to play for. I was more focused on Colchester, to be honest, the way they went about it. I thought Notts did what they needed to do. I thought Notts were professional, did what you would expect them to do. A little bit frustrated at the way Colchester went about it, but that's the Cowley brothers for you, isn't it? And the fact that they're third bottom, they were, fighting for survival, but they needed something, didn't they? And they played the first half very much like they wanted to come for a 0-0. Second half was the bit that got me, that just they suddenly became open for 10 minutes, very open, as if they'd had a word at half time. We're going to go about it differently, possibly because they heard Sutton were losing somewhere else. I don't know whether that's right. And thought, do you know what? We're going to be safe. Let's have a go. And as things transpired, the Sutton game turned around and not scored, and all of a sudden they were very much back in a dogfight at the bottom. So they're just about out of it. But I thought Notts did what they needed to do, didn't they? I thought they played reasonably well. Just frustrating for what was a fantastic last home game crowd that couldn't get a few more goals. But it wasn't sort of for the want to try, and wasn't for the lack of endeavour and the lack of effort in a sort of a dead rubber game for Notts. So I thought the players went about it pretty well, got the 3 points, clean sheet, and you can't really ask much more than that.
Well, we're not quite on our holidays just yet, nor are the players. However, I am assuming Kay, one of our flock, is. Evening all, and this is the ultimate name drop as to wherever you might be in the world, Stell. Evening all from a sunny Barbados. There you go.
Hey.
I don't think many people are going to be able to top that one. Evening from Port Huskisson. Peter Cowlishaw counters with evening from a wet Ballymena. It's always wet in Ballymena, isn't it, Peter? Evening from Graham Oates. A.D. Clark, evening, no Paul, no party. That's in reference to the infamous balloons that made a guest appearance on the podcast last week, in joke for everyone that saw them. Evening from Ian Haywood, from Stephen Newton and Karen Knight. Lippy Jane said, one thing, there are the dreaded relocation emails going out from the club over the weekend. Basically, it means that there are some more hospitality seats going in, reconfiguring the Pavis stand, which means people in the central third may well be having to move further out. And I don't know if you've had one yet, Stell, but you unfortunately you will be getting one. It's a bit like the centre forward days, isn't it? When the centre half has been giving you a bit of a tough time, so you've thought, right, I'm going out to the left wing to get out of his way. You're going in the wings now, the press box.
That's it. As your career went on, you started drifting away from the biggest bruisers, drifting out wide, maybe, and then eventually in your career you drift onto the bench and then out the team. So, yeah, we're moving. We are being moved. We think more towards the cop end in the Pavis. That's not just me. That's all the media,
That's it.
all the press seats as well. And obviously, season ticket holders. I had a woman speak to me on Saturday about probably going to be moved, and that I might be commentating from her seat, or what is currently her seat. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. I've not received a letter. I doubt I'm going to, but yeah, we are being shifted. So we'll see what comes about with that, and hopefully it doesn't mean too much disruption for people who've, because season ticket holders have their seats for a number of years, don't they? They sit there for a reason. They like the view and what have you. So I'm sure the club will do everything they can to relocate as well as possible.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think there are possibly there's a few hundred, I think, potentially involved in the move. Lippy Jane says, I presume still has had his relocation email. He referred to getting his eyes checked. Surely you should stay in the middle. Went to hospitality recently and had a restricted view seat. That may well be why they're trying to get a bit more space for hospitality seats. Ian Cooksey says, evening all, as does Dave Woolley and Duncan Comrie. Lippy Jane is one of them that's had a relocation email. Unfortunately, the rest of the family do not have season tickets. Hope we don't get split up. Evening from Jurgen. Athenian Pie sends his regards, as does Malcolm Shearston. James Moore, is it all too early to thank Paul, Stell, Chloe, and everyone else related to the Magpie Circle for all your hard work over the season? Thank you very much, James. That's very kind of you. I'm but a mere facilitator. Stephen Orton, good evening from Nottingham Trams. Well, I'm hoping Stephen's a passenger and isn't driving one of them at this moment in time. But anyway, Andy Adcock, yeah, not quite Barbados, but he's in Cyprus. So, yeah, that's not too bad. Royston says, let's finish the season in style, then sit back and see what awaits us. Ian Cooksey, I'm in the manager's going nowhere camp because the owners have said so, and rightly so, which is agreed with by Malcolm Shearston. Evening from Tom Stevens and Alex Jackson. Paul Huskisson, Stuart Maynard is still learning, and the results are getting better. James Moore, we played really well on Saturday, but for all our dominance, we never really made it count in terms of goals. Story of the season, I guess. Who's going to Forest Green? I asked that earlier. Not had anyone say they are yet. Stell will be there. I will be there. Royston, all the tweets on Colchester's Twitter were praising us. Evening from Robert Holland. Pythagorean evening. I've got a relocation email as well. Ian Haywood, last time I went to a Notts game, the away fans were in the cop standing. Okay. One game to go, Stel. One game to go. And clearly, yeah, we want the result. But if we're kind of in that sort of review mode, which I think we mostly are, how much do you think it's been a missed opportunity not to have been pushing those playoff places more aggressively? Or are you of an opinion there was always going to be a tapering away of the season, if you like?
No, very, very much a missed opportunity. Very much so. I think for numerous reasons. I think we know, now that we've known for a number of months that we're not going to be right up there. Not doing a Wrexham, Mansfield sort of Stockport job of winning the league or getting automatic. But when you look at the teams, I think the thing for me is when you look at the teams that are competing, that are up there fighting, that are in the playoffs and right on the brink of it. And, you think, the biggest one that I've heard mentioned in the last 2 or 3 weeks has been Doncaster to me,
Yeah.
because of what you see when we played. And now I missed the Doncaster game early on in the season at their place. But, they've all season looked like they're going to struggle. And all of a sudden they come with this unbelievable run. I think it's 9 wins on the spin in the league. And they're right on the verge of making the playoffs with a serious chance. And you look at it and go, well, if that's Doncaster, and I mean that with no disrespect to Doncaster, and I'm even going to take some credit because I spoke to Grant McCann about 2 months ago when he came to a Notts game, and I was speaking to him because he came as a player on loan, and when I was there as a player, so I know Grant. And I was having a chat with him, and since I've spoken to him, they've gone on this whirlwind run, climb up the table. So I don't know, take inspiration for it. But I look at that, I look at Crawley, Barrow, the teams that are up there, and go, you can't. Well, so I'm going to say they're going to sort of trip yourself up here. You can't tell me that they are definitely better teams than Notts. The league table's telling me they're better teams than Notts, but you are not telling me that Notts could not and should not be in and around them and fighting and challenging where they are. I think they should have done. And that is the reason why, we'll be as circumspect as we can about this season. It isn't, we're not going to use words like disaster or anything like that, but it is really disappointing. Certainly after the start of the season. But I think we say even before the start of the season, before a ball had been kicked, we sort of said, challenging for the playoffs at the end of the season would be a decent enough season. And you see how the season started, first 2-3 months of it. You see how Wrexham have gone on after coming up from the National League, who we had that, neck and neck battle with last season. Yes, I know their budget is way over ours. I know they'd strengthened. They brought in James McLean. They brought in Stephen Fletcher for decent sums of money in the summer. So I would absolutely accept that they have gone on, they've kicked on and got their rewards for that. But you're not telling me realistically that we shouldn't be in and around the Barrows, the Crawleys, the Doncasters. Even Bradford City are above us. We comfortably did the double over them this season.
They're flying. They can still do it, can't they? They're flying at the minute.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, just about. So, that for me emphasises the disappointment. Highlights the disappointment of where we are. It's not a disaster. Staying in the division, not a problem. Hopefully we win, and I like to think we get a top half finish at the least. And you want to win that game on Saturday, but it does. Whatever happens, it won't stop it from being a disappointing season. And to go back to last week's chat with Joe Palmer and Richard Montague, which we thank them again for their time and appreciate them speaking to not to us, but it's speaking to the fans, aren't we? We're doing this because of the fans. I think it was the thing that took it out from me. The headline quote for me from it was Richard Montague saying that the club are embarrassed at the number of goals we've conceded. And I know Carl Cameron came out and said that early in the season, but to have them say that and use the word embarrassed, that highlights that they know, where they need to look at, where they need to address. So look, with one game to go, this season has been a disappointment. And would I look at it and go, well, it was definitely going to happen like that? No, it wasn't definitely going to happen like that. But it has happened. But now it's about, come on, we've got to gather ourselves, as the fans have, trust the club to do the business in the summer, the right business, like they've predominantly done the right business before. But that's at one end of the pitch now. And as we mentioned last week, can they do it at the other end of the pitch? Can they correct something that is patently obvious that they say about, can they correct that? And if they do that, then next season has got all the hallmarks of being a promising season.
We have got a few going to Forest Green. We won't be on our own style. I'm going, says Robert Holland. Malcolm Shearston, who misses very few, he will, of course, be there as well. Tom Stevens says, tactically wise, Maynard trumps Williams. Over 46 games, that'll see more success and will give us greater chance of promotion. What do you think? Well, I think results will tell us next season as to whether he is going to tactically trump Mr. Williams, Tom Stevens. I'm going, says Yvonne Biddle. I'm going, says Alex Jackson. No one's yet volunteered whether they're going in fancy dresses. It's become like an end of season thing, hasn't it? Last away game, you go in fancy dress. AD Clark thinks Stuart Maynard gave a very positive interview after the game Saturday. Still learning his trade. It's clear to everyone we need new defenders. Palmer, Scott Badge back. Keep either or both Macca and JJ, and we could have a very strong season. Robert Holland says, I'm hoping Forest Green Rovers is better than Sutton away. That was the first one of the season, which was the only other away game I've been able to make this season. So you went to Sutton and thought, never again, Robert. That's probably the translation. I can't get to Forest Green, says Gaza Lee. My lads in a cup semi-final for Loudham under-14s at 11 a.m. Good luck to your offspring in that one, Gaza. Trust the lads playing black and white stripes as well. Stuart Smith is off to Forest Green. Bob H says, relegated. That's what happens when you don't eat meat. Me and Stella will be finding the nearest KFC or whatever before we get there. I remember Grant McCann, says Pythagorean, on loan from West Ham when he came to Notts. James Moore, we should have been in contention this season with a playoff spot at least. I think Luke Williams leaving after such a fantastic season before, it really did rip the heart out of the team. We're over it now, which I think is some fair points contained in there. Benny Boy, 29, missing out on potential promotion may be a silver lining for us, as next season in League One may have been a disaster without a substantial squad turnover in the summer. I'm not having that, Benny Boy. You take what you can when you can get it in football, because you never know when it's on offer again. Whatever comes your way, take it and worry about the future consequences after you've taken it. Martin Blaney not making the playoffs and getting promoters will cost us with our key players. We're going to come on to that. That's kind of the next question for Stout. Onwards and upwards, says James. Chris Gosling, 206 goals. Is it scored in last 2 seasons? Is that right? Blimey! With one game to go, can't complain at value for money. I tell you, when you actually throw that stat out, Chris, 206 goals, 2 seasons, flipping it. God dear. Pythagorean will be at FGR. Athenian Pie, after taking in what the top dogs said in your recent interview, that will be chief exec and football director, I am with Stell on the confidence going into the summer with some serious large fishers going out the pond. It is certainly in our hands. Jim O'Brien played like a man possessed on Saturday, says Andy Easom. Derek Flowers, if a school report was made of our season, how do you think it would read? Alan Cotty's off to Forest Green. One of our local, because I know Alan, yeah, one of our local games being only 2.25 hours drive from deepest Dorset. M. Falses can't compare Maynard to Williams for me yet. Williams got 107 points in 1 season. Enough said. Bob H. Williams turned Swansea round. Melvino Pacave, I'm going to FGR, and my friends are going as hot dogs. I don't know whether they are. I like that. What else have we got? Andy Adcock. Not sure Jim O'Brien will be very happy knowing how many people on the internet have retired him. We'll all be playing retain lists a little bit later, I'm sure. Joe Crabtree, any word on Bostock's absence from the squad on Saturday? Duncan Conrad, do you think Notts should cash in on Jones and Crowley or risk letting them leave on freeze next season, as they only signed for 2 years, I believe? James Moore, you can say what you like. We don't do boring. Right, that's up to speed on the matchwords. Okay, it is, I think it's kind of a hot topic. And it was a question that we asked Richard Montague directly last week in terms of, what confidence could you give fans? What's the situation? Are you concerned about our offensively minded players? Jody Jones has just been named League Two Player of the Season, record number of assists. Macaulay Langstaff looks odds on now to be Golden Boot for League Two in his first full season in the Football League. Dan Crowley's got double figures from midfield. And clearly any goal-scoring midfielder is always going to attract attention and is worth their weight in gold. Now, it's interesting, really. Richard gave his response to that, and we thank him for his honesty and addressing the question. No subjects were off limits. Now, many of you kind of said, "Oh, yeah, they're not going anywhere. We've got hold the cards with contracts, confident they're going to stay." My personal view, reading the tea leaves and listening to the football speak, is that Notts know there is going to be interest in those players, know there will be serious interest, and there has to be a very, very real danger that you lose the players. But were you to lose them, that money would then be put back into the playing budget. So, for what it's worth, my view, which is entirely unimportant, then, I would be very concerned that I think we'd be very unlucky to lose all three, but I think there's a very, very real chance that we could lose two of them. Stell, you've been a pro yourself, hot and cold, supply and demand. What was your take from Richard and your thoughts on, how serious is the possibility that we could be losing one or more of that kind of offensive capability?
Yeah, I thought the answer he gave was a pretty good one. If highlighted the fact that they're under contract first and foremost. And again, we've said on here, since the Reeks brothers have took over, we have not been a selling club. We've had assets, we've had players play well. We haven't been a selling club. I can only think of Cal Roberts as probably the one player that has been allowed to go on when he was under contract, and there might have been background issues as well to that sort of made that deal happen. So that's first and foremost. I think that's what he highlighted, and rightly so. Now, does that mean that they're definitely going to be here the first game of the season next season? No, of course it doesn't, because as a footballer, you're an asset. You're a piece of meat. You are goods, goods that have a value. So, but by highlighting the fact that they're under contract, and the fact that they, you don't get any interest if players aren't doing well. So, just like managers. So because they're doing well, they're going to attract interest. There's going to be interest. You can't score the goals Mac has scored this season and last season and the season before without having people circling and thinking, right, how much is he worth? Do we want him? Do we take the plunge? Same with Jody. Same with Dan Crowley, if you want to look at him as well. Same with anybody that's playing well. But the fact of the matter is that while they're under contract to Notts, their Notts hold all the cards in terms of, they're all saleable. They're all available at the right price, and it's for Notts to dictate that price to large extent. So if Notts want to put £5 million on each of them, and that just sends everybody away, we're keeping them. They're not going to do that. That's not feasible. But what it does do is say, well, we're not going to sell these guys on the cheap. Don't be coming in with 100 grand, 200 grand, different for different players, of course. But, don't be thinking we're going to sell Macaulay Langstaff. We're not in a position we've got to sell him. Don't think we're going to sell him for £500,000. Don't think you're going to come in with a cheap, low offer and turn his head, whatever. So by highlighting the fact they're under contract, that's great. But that also doesn't guarantee that they're going to be here first day of next season, because if somebody wants them strongly enough, they will pay a fee that is acceptable to Notts, where Notts will back themselves to go into the market, just like they found Jody Jones, just like they found Macaulay Langstaff originally. They will back themselves with however much money you want to say, with £1 million plus, £1.5 million maybe for the two of them, whatever it might be. But they will back themselves to be in the marketplace to replace them players with like for like, if not better, hopefully. But they will back that to be the best business for the club. And I think when you hear the whole chat last week and when you hear them speak, there are no knee-jerk reactions. Nothing is going to catch them on the hop. They are preparing for this. Macaulay Langstaff hasn't just suddenly scored 70 goals in the last two seasons. This has happened over the couple of seasons. So they're preparing for what's going to happen. They know what is likely to happen in the summer. Same with Jody, who's had a fantastic season. So they know what's happening. The ball is in their court, but I think they're shrewd enough and clever enough to play the game exactly how it should be played. No player at League Two is not for sale. Should bigger, richer fish come swimming by, but because they're under contract, because they've done good business, making sure that they're under contract, it just enables the club to get best value for their assets. And that was a big word, wasn't it? Value was a big sort of catch-all, if you like, for last week's chat about that's the way the data model and the way everything's worked. It's getting value for the club. And like I say, talking that then breeds onto the self-sustainable club in however many years' time. If that's the case, that would be fantastic news for any fan of Notts County. And it would be a model for all football clubs. I know it's easy to say, let's see us go and do it. But in terms of Macca and Jody and Dan Crowley, I would expect at least 2 of them to be in a Notts shirt first game next season.
Good. Pleased to hear it. I mean, I think the biggest plus Notts have is that the brothers don't need the money. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Some clubs have to sell players, one a year or whatever it is to offset the operating losses because they haven't got any funds from anywhere else. So they desperately need a transfer fee that then goes to prop the club up. Whereas quite clearly, the levels of investment, the money the brothers have already put in, the new pitch, the Nest warehouse conversion, that's 7 figures. Those 2 projects are well north of £1 million, well north of £1 million. So it's not like they need the money. So I think that's one of the biggest pluses we've got. You raise a good point, as we've mentioned on the show before. There's kind of, some fans kind of, we're doing what Brighton and Brentford do, and we buy players cheap and we sell high. They've never done that. Ruben Rodriguez's contract was allowed to run down to maximise our chances of going up, and he left on a free. Kyle Wootton left on a free. These were both players, might not have been a massive value, but they had a sale value, and they didn't max out that sale value. They wanted the contribution to the club to maximise the chances of getting out the National League. I think it's an interesting dynamic. I'll get your view on it. If you're Luke Williams, do you come in for Macaulay Langstaff? Look, clearly Macaulay can play at a higher level. As of now, how much higher level do you think he could play? Neil Warnock a year ago said he thought he was good enough to play and score goals in the Championship, and said, I'd take him. Those were Neil's words. I mean, as a striker, goal scoring union and all that, how good is Macaulay in your opinion?
Yeah, I would agree. I think he could go and score goals in the Championship. What I would say, and whether Luke Williams comes in for him or whatever, I don't know, in the summer, what I would say is I think with the way Macca plays, he would need to go to the right team. If he is going to go, he's the way he plays, or certainly the way he's played for Notts, he needs to go, I think, into a similar sort of team. I know he's played that wide role at Gateshead and drifting in from the left-hand side and playing a little bit more withdrawn a little bit for Notts at times this season. But I think in the right team who are going to create chances, he's a fantastic finisher. He is a fantastic finisher. And if teams can provide him chances, then he'll take them. Doesn't matter whether that's Championship, League One, League Two, doesn't matter. Give a goal scorer chances, they'll tuck them away. They either can finish or they can't, and Macca can finish, as we well know. The other side of that is if you go to the wrong team in the wrong setup, what I don't see Macca doing is going to a team, and somebody wouldn't buy him for this, but you don't imagine Macca going and sort of being a target man, if you like, for a team that wants to play one up front and play balls into him where he's going to have to get hold of the ball up against big, strong, decent defenders in the Championship. That's not his strength. That's not his sort of game. So, I don't see that. You would have to go to the right team that want to play the right sort of way and almost make him a bit of a spearhead, even in the Championship, certainly top of League One. But, you go to the Championship, then it is about the team you go to. So, look, can he go to anywhere bigger than Notts? No, stay here, score loads of goals here, break all the records. That's what I would say. But with a serious point that, I don't think you just go for anybody. I don't think he should just go for anybody. And that's not me saying, look, stay here forever and, score loads of goals, take knots up and do it that way, which I would like. But from his point of view, I don't think if he went to, say, a Huddersfield or, a team that might, you might go, it's Championship football. I know they're possibly going down, but they might struggle. Then that might not be a great move. If you go as a striker, certainly as a goal scorer, to a team that struggles, that maybe doesn't create loads of chances, that all of a sudden, then you go there, you might not score loads of goals because you won't get loads of chances. And all of a sudden, people say, who's this? He can't make the step up. And all of a sudden, you find yourself playing sort of, let's say, reserve team football, but you're not in the squad all of a sudden, and it sort of goes a bit sour. It's the same sort of ethos, if you like, as to what people are maybe thrown at Stuart Maynard, moving from Wealdstone to Notts as a manager. It's the step up. He can't do that. He can't go from part-time to full-time. You will be scrutinised at a new club more. So for Macca, then I think, we're better than where you are. The grass isn't always greener. But there is an element of truth to that. If he can go and, obviously make loads more money financially for himself and his family, then he'd have to consider it. Of course he would. But, it's not a straightforward decision because he's going from somewhere where he's absolutely loved, who obviously going to pay him well anyway. And he is the main man, and he could go and break all the records he wants to, should he stay. So look, he's good enough to go and play the Championship and score goals in the Championship. No question. I don't think Premier League clubs would come and take him at the minute. I don't think. But then it would be about getting the right club, getting the right fit.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Andy Easom says agents pull the strings and will turn players' heads. Ian Cooksey adds, I'm certain before anyone is sold, the club will have their replacements lined up. Dave Woolley says Jones and Crowley love it here and realise which side their bread is buttered. They know what it's like not to be playing games. Joe Crabtree, interestingly, our most profitable assets so far have been the departing coaches rather than players, i.e. Birchinall and Williams. James Ford says, I think Jody Jones would be a bigger loss than Macca. Put Scott in Langstaff's position this season and he could have equalled goals scored. I hope neither go, but we can't turn down 2 mil if it comes in. Alan Cotty, I suspect at least one of Langstaff, Jones, Crowley will go. Hopefully the club are realistic to have their eyes on potential replacements already. James Moore, the chat last week reaffirmed how well organised off the field we are as a club. I've said it before, but we are so lucky to have such forward-thinking, level-headed owners. Dave Woolley, Luke Williams will come in for Palmer. Lippy Jane, the agent podcasts have got me concerned about players' rights. With your inside knowledge, can the player say no? I have a sneaky feeling Macca will go to Wrexham. Cue meltdown if that ever happened. Gazali says, my feeling is all 3 will stay. And Lippy Jane is agreement. Joe Crabtree, if Macca sees out his contract, he could feasibly catch Les Brad's all-time goal scoring record. Andy Adcock, Macca isn't just a finisher. His work rate is phenomenal. He's a real grafter. Adi Clark, I agree with Stell that Macca definitely Championship pedigree. Also look how well Wootton and Ruben are doing at their clubs. Credit to Notts developing. Yeah, it is an interesting point that Ruben's done well at Oxford in a playoff chase inside a division higher than us, and Kyle Wootton, and a lot of people were kind of questioning him. Well, he's now a League One player as of merit. Right. That's kind of offensively stout. And you've mentioned, one of the key takeaways, a headline, if you like, was Richard Montague last week saying that everyone was embarrassed strong word to use, but accurate, I think, by the number of goals conceded. And without giving too much away, clearly, and there have been hints from Stuart Maynard, Notts are going to be looking at bringing additional personnel into the club from a defensive capability minded rather than offensively. And I do find it very interesting that Mansfield promoted this year. Kyler Dunn got a bag full of goals. Yet Mansfield's player of the season, in a year when clearly they've done more attacking than defending, was Aidan Flint, centre half. So I find that quite interesting. How much surgery, new personnel, change in tactics do you think needs to be done in the summer?
There needs to be new personnel, obviously. I think everybody knows that. To what extent, this is where it becomes more complicated. This is what muddies the waters, and we've been saying this for weeks, and I think we had nothing to contradict it last week from Joe Palmer or Richard Montague, is that if the fix was as simple as we just signed 2 decent defenders and everything else stays the same and we are sorted, then they would have had a go at doing that. I think the difficulty lies in, we've got to shore up the defence. Obviously, we've got to find out how to concede less goals. But when you look through the team, we've got, or the way we've sort of played predominantly, and so I'll give a bit of credit to Stuart Maynard. He tried to change this with varying levels of success. If you play the back 3, you've got wing backs, and your wing backs who virtually pick themselves, I think, are Jody on the left and Aaron the Man on the right. Right, so that leaves you with obviously your midfield sort of 3, which are 2 attacking midfield players in behind Macca. So in Dan Crowley, David McGoldrick, or there's been Sam Austin, hasn't it, recently with them. Matty Palmer got injured, obviously, so he's not there. If you look at them as your midfield line, there's not a lot of height there. There's not a lot of defensive protection there. And I think the conundrum comes in that, yes, the defenders, the 3 at the back, have been exposed massively, found wanting, and we've not defended our box well enough. But it is a collective. It is a collective. There's been individual errors, which, just been ridiculous. They've been embarrassing, individual errors. But it is that collective of how you balance having 5'5" Jody Jones, 5'5" Aaron the Man, 5'6" Sam Austin, 5'6" Dan Crowley, Macaulay Langstaff in the same team. All that attacking prowess, but if we're honest, very little defensively. Sam Austin probably gives more than the others. Then we've had John Bostock, who's been the sort of holding midfield player. Scott Robertson, I think, has come in and done well. I think he's shown he's got the physicality to get about, to mix it up a little bit. He's not just about, getting on the ball, passing it, pulling the strings. But it's always about getting that balance between your defensive players, your players who can head it. Yes, I want better individual defenders. That I think that underlines everything. Does it mean we get rid of everybody that's already there? Maybe get rid of what you can and bring in, but only if you can bring in better. It's not for saying that, it's Kyle Cameron, it's Aidan Baldwin, it's Lewis McCarry. Well, people will say they've been quite happy with Lewis McCarry since he signed for the club, but he's been part of this team since the turn of the year, really, that's been conceding plenty of goals. So it's more than just changing the individual components. You've got to be better, but you've also got to be better collectively. And that's why I asked a question of Richard Montague last week about the recruitment as to sort of what comes first. Does the head coach tell you the formation and then you buy the best players that you think will fit them positions, or do you buy the best players you think and then it's down to the head coach to fit them players into what he thinks is the best formation for the players that you've got? And I think that's going to be the interesting bit for Stuart Maynard. How do you stop conceding the number of goals that we've been conceding all season without stopping the attacking impetus and the attacking threat we've got? It's slightly more complicated than let's just buy two big defenders, two Aidan Flint type defenders. You know, if it was as simple as that, then like I say, I'm fairly sure they would have tried to have done it, or they would have done it, but they haven't been able to, and it is difficult. It is not quite as simple as going sign Aidan Flint, sign Bailey Cargill, sign X, Y, and Z defender that's just got promoted, Fraser Horsfall for Stockport. You know, go and get them. See if they're going to play. See if they're going to play when they go up a division, and if not, go and get them. They might help. They might certainly help. But it's about getting players that are better. It's always the same. Getting players that are better than what you've got. That strengthens the squad. What I did like about what Richard said, sorry to keep going on, but what I did like about what he said, and both of them, neither of them mentioned that, but we've got to get people out the door first because we've got them players we've mentioned under contract. Now, there might need to be wheeling and dealing, might need to be players go, of course, but it wasn't. It was like, yeah, we're embarrassed about it. We're going to do something about it. You know, sort of leave it with us, if you like. It wasn't, we've got to try and get two or three out first before we can bring somebody in. It wasn't that. It's almost like, yep, the budget's going to be there to bring what we need in. And that's what I like.
I think it's an interesting point that kind of alludes to the conundrum that we're all trying to solve. It comes from Chris B. We need Jody Jones, but we can't play him and Naman as wing backs and be solid defensively. Four at the back with JJ Naman as wingers, wide forwards. And that's kind of the interesting discussion, Stell, isn't it? That look, Jody Jones has had a stellar season, League Two Player of the Year, creating all these chances up and down, taking players on. Are we kind of saying, actually, and now he needs to add a bit more defensive capability to his game? So when he's tracking, I mean, the reality is, he wouldn't be a League Two player if he could do all of that. And it is interesting, I think, as to how much more could you ask of your wing backs to be defensively when they are, I think, when you would look at most of their career, they will be considered attacking threats, wingers, rather than those wing back roles. And I think that's a really interesting question and dilemma as to whether you can realistically ask them to spruce up on their defensive skills as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, let's have it right. Jody Jones and Aaron the Man are wingers. You know, they're wingers who generally have been asked to play wing back and do what you can defensively, but you are predominantly.
But we've let in 85 goals by having wingers that we're trying to shoehorn into wing backs.
Yep. So this is part of, but again, that conundrum is led to by another problem. You play wing backs, you play three central defenders. In the modern day game, that generally leaves quite a bit of 1v1 defending, against a couple of strikers or a striker and a couple of number 10, slightly withdrawn, but you generally have to be decent 1v1 defending. Gone are the days where, Colchester played a pure 4-4-2, didn't they, on Saturday first half? But generally gone are the days of you get 4-4-2, you've got two centre-halves against a couple of strikers, and your full-backs pick up the wingers and then tuck round and help you over. You should always have an overload, if you like, but generally, nowadays, players are trusted, if you like, to do 1v1 defending at times. And then the others obviously have to get back and filter back and help create the numbers. But I think what's been found out is that the best way of playing with Notts, we play a back four or two centre halves. We got exposed a little bit. We that's not been the way. And I'm going right back to Luke Williams at the start of him, and it became we need that three. We need that third man. So we need that extra defender. Gives us a bit more solidity. So then we've got wing backs by design. Now it was Adam Chickson, who's more of a defensive-minded, left-sided last season. But then Jody since he's come to the club, and certainly this season, he's absolutely, took his game to another level, consistent run of games, being back fit again. But he's obviously the polar opposite of Adam Chickson, because he scored a load of goals the season before. But he's a winger who's playing wing back, as Adam Chickson's a defender who's playing wing back when he played it. So two different types of wing back. But it's circumstances that have meant that we're playing wing backs. Adam Chickson would probably rather play left back in a back four, and Jody Jones would rather play left midfield, left wing in a team that plays a back four that's got a left back behind him. But because of other circumstances, other weaknesses, if you like, in the team, that we haven't got that. We haven't had a back four. So if you had a back four, and this is where I'm coming back to the recruitment side of it, do they go into the recruitment side this summer thinking, yep, assuming we're going to keep the players that we've got at the minute, we're keeping Jody, but you know what? We need to free him up and he can be a left winger. You know, play high. Yes, obviously every player's got to do a bit of defensive duty, of course they have. But he's got somebody behind him. He's got a left back behind him who can help him out, of course, go on overlaps and all that sort of thing. But Jody, go and create havoc. Go and give us that delivery that you give us. Same with Aaron the man on the other side, right? Go and use your pace. Get turning and get in behind the opposition. Make them run back towards their own goal. Make them sit deep because of that threat of that pace in behind them. And by doing that, then you've got to put a right back in. So do they go out and go, right, what we need now is defenders who can play in a back four and go and get the personnel that make up a solid back four for Notts. They might be doing that. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if they did that. And one other bit to come back to is Matty Palmer. I'm sort of not putting him back in because A, I don't know when he's going to be available. B, you never know, how anybody's going to come back after a serious injury. But I'll keep him on the back burner to be an absolute Brucey bonus when he is fit, because he's a fantastic player. I think everyone knows how highly rated he is. But let's just assume he's not going to be there for the start of the season. Do you then go, can you trust Scott Robertson to play as a holding midfield player? Do you play, 4-5-1 with the two wide players making the support? There's all different formations. But if you move one part of the team around, you've then got decisions to make in other areas of the team in exactly who's going to play and how they're going to play, because one person's role can affect somebody on the other side of the pitch's role just because you have to just rejig the team.
Very thoughtful. A lot of praise coming in on the message boards for Scott Robertson. James Moore says, Robertson has really added some much needed physicality. Lippy Jane agrees. Robertson was great. He uses his whole self, including his brain. Some really clever passing too. Dale Pikett says Robertson Palmer in the middle next season could be one of the best in the league next season. We'll come on to goalkeepers in a minute. Derek Flowers, we need players to make up a strong subs bench as well. Joe Crabtree agree a Robertson Palmer midfield might enable us to keep the back three and the wing backs. Notts allow far too many crosses into the box. Very good point from Paul. Stop the crosses at source and it's easier to defend. Ian Cooksey, Aaron Hayden at Wrexham is out of contract at Wrexham this season. I'd take him in a heartbeat. Only question mark would be his fitness. James mentioned early that JJ and Aaron the Man are not wing backs, they're flying wingers. Yeah, I think we'd probably all agree with that. Andy Easom, I'd offer Ashby Hammond the chance to sign permanently, but would also be looking for a second new keeper. Crikey, how many more are we going to have? To challenge for the number one position. Bob H. Brindley is a decent fullback in a back four. David Skinner, after the Walsall victory, Stuart Maynard was saying he was shouting for a man to go down in the penalty area before scoring. After Colchester, he says he tells keepers to go down to get instructions on the pitch. Gamesmanship, call it what you like. Not heard the specific quotes myself. ZO, Ashby Hammond, very lucky to have clean sheet on Saturday. Does not dominate his area. Goalkeeping is a problem they must address. A weakness all season. Need a strong spine to the team. It's interesting still, isn't it? I mean, we've kind of rotated three keepers, and at various stages, after being brought in, I think all three have then been dropped again, and then been brought in again, which is very unusual, really. And normally 46 league games, your number one choice keeper plays about 44 of them. When you're a successful team, let's put it like that. Where are you on goalkeepers? The one thing, fan hat as opposed to hosting this is. And I appreciate the model for goalkeeping is a little bit different these days. But I do like my goalkeepers to come out and collect the ball. And I think where you have a scenario where you don't necessarily have towering, aerially dominant defenders, I think a strong keeper that comes and collects balls takes some of the pressure off your centre halves. And this is not a criticism of anyone, but we kind of seem to have an overall weakness in getting the first ball when it comes into our box, be it first contact header, be it the goalkeeper coming out. Just generally, for me, there's a weakness there. Where are you on goalkeeping and Notts this season and moving forward?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head really with it. I think that the sort of the story of the season tells you everything you need to know, don't you? Started with Aidan Stone, then Sam, and then eventually Luca Ashby-Hammond, and then almost on a rotation, they've all been in and all been dropped and all, I say dropped, but no, rotated, shifted.
Rotated, yeah.
Unfortunately, well, let's call it a way. It is a modern day dropped, isn't it, if you're not in the team? But it needs resolving. I think, would I don't think any one of them three, now, as of today, I would say, yeah, give him the number one shirt for next season. I don't think any of them have earned it. Again, and this is not to be derogatory. I've been spoken positively about Sam Slocum. I think he's a decent keeper, really good keeper. But as of what we've seen this season, there's not been a level of consistency that again, it's finding a balance, isn't it? I think Luca Ashby-Hammond was brought in because he's better with his feet than what we've got in Aidan Stone and Sam Slocum. Yeah. And yes, I think that's right. Left foot and right foot, that is right. But I think you're right as well. Does he dominate his box? Does he come and claim crosses? Not that I've seen. Certainly not that I've seen. So you want a keeper that does it all, and then you want one that's willing to come down to League Two. So very difficult, very, very difficult to get the whole package in terms of what you want. Then it comes down to, the way Notts are going to play. Is it more important to have a keeper that's really good with his feet, who maybe doesn't dominate his box as much, or do we want dominating the box? If we go to a 4, we might need that domination of the box, and we'll sacrifice somebody who can, all right, as long as he can kick the ball and he can get it from A to B, then okay, that's good enough. Bearing in mind, we're not going to ask him to knock defence splitting passes. He's going to be playing percentages, hopefully. So it's a conundrum. It really is a conundrum, and you have to think. This is why you have to have all your ducks in line. It's never Championship manager. Yep, we'll have him. You've got to think, where does that, again, jigsaw piece, as I call it, round peg in a round hole, whatever you want to call it, what are we looking for? What's the best fit, and what's the best that we can actually get? As we sat here now, and again, we aren't even thinking about who's under contract for next season in the goalie department. As of now, I would say it's absolutely up for grabs for the number one jersey at the start of next season. And that's whether they go out and get somebody new or not. But I don't think anybody at the minute out of them three, Aidan, Sam or Luca, could say, yeah, it should be me.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you make the very valid point that we all want the very best here, there and everywhere. But we've probably, we have got the League Two Player of the Year in Jody Jones. We have got the top goal scorer in League Two in Macaulay Langstaff. And, I think personally for us to be truly successful next season, and that has to be playoffs or automatics, wouldn't it be great, if we had a goalkeeper, and at least one centre half that every other club in League Two would say, I wish he was our goalkeeper. I wish he was our centre half, because I think until such point as we get one or two of them, I'm not sure we're going to be in a position to be in the playoffs, or certainly in automatic. I thought it was interesting watching Stockport, and they had every right to be on the beach, didn't they? God knows how many Jaeger bombs and whatever else they drunk from 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock on Saturday to getting on a bus to come to Nottingham on Tuesday lunchtime or whenever they drove down. But, they finished the game very strong as well after that bad 15-20 minute spell. But for me, they kind of had a bit of a blueprint, for what is needed. And we've said before off air, haven't we, that if you analysed and did your end of season review, what is needed to be successful, Stockport, Wrexham and Mansfield are not a million miles apart in the way they approach it, really.
Yeah, I'd say that you look at them, I repeat myself, but you look at them teams and you look at them and say there's no obvious weakness. No obvious weakness, not at this level. Not, you go up levels, of course, you can pick them apart about all different sorts of things. But at this level, they're solid, aren't they? I think that's the thing that I would say about all them teams. Like I say, we've got the player of the year, we've got the leading scorer, yet we're sat in the bottom half of the table with one game to go.
Frustration.
So that to me says, if you were looking at Notts from the outside in, what you say, well, they've got some absolute quality, but that must mean they've got some right weaknesses in other areas because they've conceded 40 more goals than those at the top of the table. So you can get at them. It's like a team full of Messis and Ronaldos. You're struggling when you ain't got the ball, but when you've got it, you make hay because nobody's doing any defending against you. So you always try and look for weaknesses in opposition. And I think the three teams at the top, you would say, hey, it stands to reason. It's logic, isn't it? They've got the least weaknesses. That's why they're top of the table. But they've done it by being solid units. And again, I said about Mansfield, they're a team that's had to be in this division for a number of years with a good budget, again, really good budget. And they've strengthened each year and not quite got there, but they seem to have built. They've got a really experienced manager, good quality manager, and they've eventually got over the line this season. But it's not been easy. Stockport have got a big budget. They came up out of the National League, 2 seasons ago. Didn't quite get the job done last season, but then added again and strengthened and got the job done this season. Wrexham came up with a massive budget, decent players, big squad, and added to it and spent again in the summer, and they've got the job done. So, look, again, you can't make Notts have a budget that they can't afford, so you can't go out and just buy players that are better than the level. But what you can do is look at what other teams are doing. Are we strong? Have we got strength in all areas? And you'd have to say we have weaknesses. Like I say, even with the likes of Jody and Aaron, the man, you say, well, we're strong in wide areas. But they're weaknesses because we said, yeah, but they can't, they're not great defenders. They're not great fullbacks at doing the wing-back job. So it's improving where the weaknesses are whilst not detracting from where the positives are. That's the beauty of recruitment. And there's going to be 24 clubs in this division for next season having that exact same dilemma this summer of where do you strengthen? And again, that's restricted by your budget appropriate improvement. That's what it is. But it's so important that you get strength in all areas. And I think the obvious area for Notts has been defensively. And I think, like you say, a lot of that stems from a bit of an instability in terms of what's between the sticks. Having 3 different goalkeepers in a season doesn't come about usually when you're top of the table.
The goalkeeping debate has sparked quite a few comments. Alan Cotty says, bring Tiernan Brooks back and make him number 1. Gazzalee, James Belshaw, who's at Harrogate, born and raised, Notts County fan. He's one of our own, says Gazzalee. Bring back Steve Cherry, says Peter Caldershaw. You'd have probably watched him at Derby, wouldn't you, Stow? Bloody hell, in his early days, I think.
I did, and last time I saw Ches at Meadow Lane, he wasn't moving so well with his knees and that. So Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's one, but yeah, great goalkeeper back in the day. Yeah.
He'd still fill most of the goal. And I talk as someone who's a bit portly myself, but he'd fill most of the goal, you know.
I was going to say, wouldn't we all?
Oh dear. Oh yeah, we had a laugh and a joke about this. James Moore, Paul, there's one thing we all want to know from the interview last week. Did Stell have an audio issue, or had he just got back from the dentist?
Yeah, right. Am I coming across loud and clear? Like, somebody mentioned this to me on Saturday and said, you sounded like you'd just come out of the pub. I said, we recorded it at like 10 in the morning. What are you about? And I didn't know at the time. None of you, well, you didn't say anything that I sounded.
I had balloons going up. I mean,
well, we know that, yeah. And I mean, I've been suffering with a bit of man flu the last couple of weeks. That's been fine. So I've been a bit croaky and a bit hoarse and whatever. So, but somebody said you sounded like you were slurring your words. So I've actually listened to a bit of it, and I do. That was not me. That was not what I sounded like. So that was something somewhere on the technology. I was not freshly out the local on a 12-hour session.
Oh, David Skinner produces some goalkeeping names from the past. I do remember these: Roy Brown, Barry Watling, Raddy, Cherry. Eric McManus gets another mention as well. George Smith, I don't remember him. David Skinner does. What else have we got on the goalkeepers front? Derek Flowers, not sure any of the current crop are good enough. We can all see that. David Skinner is never an happy bunny. Mr. Mace, we will never play like Mansfield or Stockport. The brothers don't like it. Well, I'm sure you've already told them that when you've seen him on the train going back to London, Mr. Skinner. I know sometimes you share the same train with him. There's nothing to choose between the teams outside the top three, says Stuart Smith. A real weakness in the air, says Pythagorean. Sutton and Salford both exposed it. Lee Swanwick, I think the defence would have been better this year with a consistent keeper. Keepers never get the credit for helping keep the defensive shape by being vocal. And I think that's about, yeah. Jameson was happy with your reply, except you weren't in the boozer. Right, we've done the hour, so we'll be wrapping up. Forest Green, Stell. I guess it's a salutary lesson. It's brilliant that we have the pyramid, but if you get it wrong and you get into a downward spiral, and we would know this ourselves from 2019, back to back relegations, back to back. And sometimes there's not a lot of sympathy for Forest Green because they're viewed as not really a Football League club, which is unfair. They got into the Football League on merit. They're probably dropping out of the Football League because they deserve to in terms of on-field performances. It is a salutary lesson, though, Stowe. When you get something wrong at a football club, these things can implode. Very, very hard to stop. I did think Steve Cottrell would probably keep them up. Good manager, hasn't been able to. But, a sorry tale of a League One club who are now going back to the conference.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a bit of a, be careful sometimes what you wish for and all that sort of thing, because they have got a decent. I know nothing about the internals of Forest Green, by the way, other than they don't have much meat or any meat. But they've got a decent budget. Their owner, Dale Vince, is a wealthy man. You look at the managers that they've had in recent times, and they've gone through them like nobody's business. But Duncan Ferguson, say Steve Cottrell at the minute, Troy Deeney was there, obviously, wasn't he? Scored a hat-trick at Meadow Lane earlier this season. They don't go there for peanuts, so you assume that there's a decent budget at Forest Green. So why have they got back-to-back relegations? Now, that can also breed into the fact, and I know full well, that if you get a sort of club where money sort of gets thrown about carelessly, and I'm not suggesting this has happened at Forest Green, like I say, I've no idea, but I'm just trying to surmise and put two and two together, then you go on that downward spiral. Yeah, League One, difficult division. It doesn't work out. You go down, but then you're on that slide of, well, we can't remember what it's like to win a game.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know what winning football's like, and then it happens goes on in League Two, and you're on a slide. It's why I thought it was so important not to carry on the momentum this season of positive. You know, winning football. It's a habit. It is a habit. It really is, and just like losing is. So, yeah, you've got to be careful that Forest Green have not got the smallest budget in the division. That's why they're down the bottom. They've obviously had problems that have mounted up for a while. That's why they're having back-to-back relegations, and unfortunately for them, they're going back into the National League and back into non-league. But it is a sort of a warning to anybody that, and we know it just as well. You know, nobody is too big to get on that downward spiral, and once you're on it, it is very difficult to stop it.
Yeah. And I'm glad David Skinner's mentioned it, because I was desperately trying to bite my tongue. They had a manager called Birchinall, awful manager. But the sad thing is, it really was, unfortunately for Ian, it did start with when he got the job in League One, and they've never recovered from that first game in League One over the past 2 seasons. James Moore agrees. I thought Steve Cottrell would have kept them up 8 games ago. I also saw they have a top 5 budget. They must have some serious problems off the field as well as on. Mr. Skinner adds, Forest Green Rovers' problem is they don't call a sausage a sausage. Look, we should really not rejoice in any club's downfall. We've been there. You know, we've been there, and we know how difficult it can be. But that's the beauty of the pyramid, isn't it? If you didn't have relegation, you know, life would be pretty boring. So hopefully, I'll keep an eye out for the hot dogs, as in fancy dress costumes on Saturday. I wonder if you genuinely are going as hot dogs, whether they'll let you in. We'll see. Stel, thank you ever so much indeed. We'll be back next week. We'll probably leave it and time it in and around when season ticket prices are announced, which should be, I think it's over the weekend or Monday. I believe it's a small increase. Don't worry, it's not a Nottingham Forest percentage proportions, but I believe it's a small increase. And as and when the club announce their retain list as well. So just the one more show. Stel's having a break. I'm having a break over summer. It feels like a long old season. Break. We'll be watching 3 games a day. European Championships from mid-June, won't we? With all them matches. Anyway, Stel, thank you very much as always for your time this evening.
Pleasure. No problem.
Very good. And I'm assuming, we've not had anything, that everyone thinks you've sounded extremely coherent and not like you've just fallen out of the dog and duck at 10 past 10 on Wednesday morning.
Well, that'd be a first. Yeah, that'd be a first if I sound coherent, but I'd take that. Just not slurring my words, I'd accept that.
And to everyone on the message board, thank you very much. So we'll see you next week for the last time for the current season. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Cheers.